All right, kids, happy Friday morning. It is December 22nd. In anticipation of Christmas and family gatherings, and after multiple requests, this is the video where I am going to respond to the MAGA talking points that we've all seen over the last few days, erupting after the Colorado Supreme Court issued a ruling declaring Donald Trump ineligible for the primary ballot in 2024 in the state of Colorado because he engaged in an insurrection against the United States in accordance with Section 3 of the 14th Amendment. So I'm going to do their talking points and respond. Talking point and respond, okay? He was never charged with insurrection. The language of the 14th Amendment does not require a criminal conviction. The language of the 14th Amendment does not require any court activity or determination at all, civil or criminal. Prosecutor Jack Smith, in prosecuting the January 6th case against Donald Trump, did not charge Donald Trump with insurrection or with seditious conspiracy. Remember that multiple members of the Proud Boys and the Oath Keepers were charged with seditious conspiracy. They were convicted and received prison sentences of between 10 and 20 years. So, Merry Christmas to them. Prosecutors have wide discretion in deciding who they're going to charge and what they're going to charge them with. Jack Smith has charged Donald Trump with 4 felonies in Washington, D.C. relative to January 6th and his efforts to overturn the 2020 election. He picked 4 felonies that he thought would be slam dunks, and so that's how he's progressing. Next talking point. This is double jeopardy. Donald Trump was acquitted by the Senate. The Senate is not a criminal trial. The Senate is not a court anyway. The Senate is part of the legislative branch. The courts are part of the judicial branch, the judiciary. There are separation of powers issues. He has never been charged or tried in any criminal court in the United States for insurrection. So double jeopardy does not apply. And anybody who says double jeopardy to you is telling you that they are dumb. There was no trial. There was a trial. There was a 5-day trial in Colorado at the trial court level. The decision we just got was an appeal of that trial court's ruling. It was appealed to the Colorado Supreme Court, and the Colorado Supreme Court is the decision we got today. I have both of those decisions, and I'm going to be reading them this weekend and doing a podcast episode on both of them combined. But there was a 5-day trial. The trial court issued a 102-page ruling that was based on evidence. It was based on witnesses. Donald Trump was represented by attorneys during that 5-day trial. And because it was not a criminal action or a criminal trial, Donald Trump was not required to attend that trial and did not attend that trial. This violates Trump's civil rights or due process. Section 3 of the 14th Amendment is self-activating. It's the same, it's like a toddler complaining that their due process rights have been violated because the Constitution requires the president to be 35 years old, and that toddler is not 35 years old. It's self-activating. There doesn't need to be anything else to happen. If you engage in insurrection, you're ineligible to hold federal office, period. He did, so he's not. I made notes for this one. Okay, my favorite one is that this ruling is unconstitutional. Why is this one so amusing to me? This is amazing because they are using the language of the Constitution to say that the Constitution is unconstitutional. The language of Section 3 of the 14th Amendment is crystal clear. The clear, plain, unambiguous meaning of that clause: if insurrection, then no president. Period. The language of this section of the Constitution is clearer than the language in the Second Amendment, and they only read the second half of the Second Amendment anyway. It's just funny. They say the 14th Amendment only applies to Confederate soldiers and Confederate officers. There's no such language in the amendment. There's no such language in the amendment. There's no expiration date in the amendment. There's no, this only applies to these certain people. There's none of that language in the amendment at all. None of that language applies. It just doesn't exist. When they scream election interference, if they scream that this is election interference, then what the hell was January 6th at the Capitol? What was that? That was election interference. Everything that Donald Trump did between Election Day 2020 and January 6, 2021, his efforts to try to overturn a free and fair election, that is election interference. This is disenfranchising millions of voters by preventing them from voting for who they want to vote for. That's bullshit. Disenfranchising voters means taking away someone's right to vote, not taking away someone's right to vote for a specific person that they want to vote for because that person's a felon and engaged in an insurrection against the United States. Nobody's being disenfranchised. You're seeing a lot of right-wing commentators say that this is making people so angry because they're tired of being censored and shadow banned. When you're talking about being censored and being shadow banned, you're talking about social media. The First Amendment does not apply to social media. These people understand the First Amendment about as well as they understand the Second Amendment, which is to say they don't. Biden's weaponized Department of Justice. The Colorado case was brought by some Republican voters, represented by a private nonprofit. Biden has nothing to do with the Colorado case. The DOJ has nothing to do with the Colorado case. Merrick Garland has nothing to do with the Colorado case. This case has absolutely nothing to do with the federal courts or the federal Department of Justice. They're not involved at all. Now, here's where you can throw something in their face. Originalism. Originalism is a theory of interpreting the Constitution as an appellate judge or a Supreme Court justice based on the clear language and clear meaning of the document itself and the intent of the founding fathers who drafted it. Well, the language of Section 3 of the 14th Amendment is extremely clear. It is very clearly written. There's nothing ambiguous about it. It even makes sense today, written in its little old English format that they used to do back in the day. It makes sense. And who are the originalists? Well, it was a theory that was made popular by Justice Antonin Scalia. But who are the originalists that are on the court right now? Justices Gorsuch, Kavanaugh, Alito, Thomas, Roberts. I'm missing one. But they're all about originalism in history, originalism in history, originalism in history. Well, if they're going to stick to that, then they're going to have to go by the actual language in Section 3 of the 14th Amendment this time as well. And they won't. I guarantee you they won't. Lauren Boebert, God love her, she said this is judicial activism. It's reading the Constitution and applying it. Little tiny Ben Shapiro, all 5'4" and 120 pounds of him, of course, is squawking about civil war. God love him. I got a bunch of comments from people on the right, and I think this is the last talking point here, that the organization CREW, Citizens something Ethics in Washington, I don't remember exactly what it stands for, they're funded by George Soros. Well, who gives a shit? He makes a lot of donations, and they're all legal. And it's like, people who squawk about Soros, they don't like it when you bring up the fact that Leonard Leo from the Federalist Society, although he's left the Federalist Society. Why did he leave the Federalist Society? He's the guy who's responsible for every conservative justice we have on the Supreme Court today. Leonard Leo, remember that name. Some wealthy industrialist, I think he was from Chicago last year, died and donated $1.6 billion to Leonard Leo so that he could further pack the federal courts. The people who talk about George Soros, who has donated like $35 billion of his fortune to charities. Yeah, he has. Those guys don't like to talk about Leonard Leo getting $1.6 billion to pack the federal courts. They also don't like to talk about the Koch brothers. They don't like to talk about them either and the tens of millions of dollars that they put in. Okay, I'm out of time. I hope that helps. Merry Christmas.